Everybody, welcome back to Mr. Muller's seventh grade science classroom. It is April 28th today. It's a Tuesday. We're going to go over a few things today, and I'm going to read again from the textbook starting on page 90. So, yesterday's assignment, just a reminder, here's this week's assignment. I'm on hour one just because. But yesterday's assignment was, what is a plant? Okay. Easy, you read 84 to 89. I actually read that, but if you want to read it on your own, of course you can. And you answer the Google form. Nice and easy. Today, well, here's my lecture video from yesterday. Also, just a reminder, I re-uploaded the textbook pages for just the plant unit. I put them in a PDF form. So if you'd like to just do this, you can. How do you pronounce those? The baobab trees? I can't remember. We've talked about them this year. They're pretty interesting. They look like upside down potatoes, but they're actually gigantic. If I remember showing you a picture, they're huge. They're like 40, 50 feet long and very, very wide too, like 20 feet wide too. So, okay. Good stuff here. So then you would start reading yesterday from here, page 84. As you can see, bottom left here tells you the page numbers. Today we're going to read starting page 90, and actually we'll just pull this up while I read. But we'll start right here. That's just a reminder. And when we get to the animal unit, I'll obviously re-upload the animal pages. Yesterday was Mystery Science Monday. I just put on the side here. Most of you know this, but maybe your parents are looking at this. I just want to say not required. So you see how it's material, view material. It's not required for schoolwork. So you do not have to watch this video and comment on it or do questions about it or anything like that. So it's just for if you like Mystery Science Monday and you want to know why birds lay eggs in the spring. Some of you may know that. Some of you may be interested. I'm just putting it up there because that's what we do in class. Today's assignment, which will be classifying plants. So pages 90 to 99 in your textbook. I'm going to read those in just a second, like I said, and then you're going to go in nice and easy to the Google form. Wednesday's and Thursday's assignment will be a little bit different. So instead of answering the Edpuzzle questions right in the video, which I know is very easy and very convenient to do, this Edpuzzle video, I'm not going to go over this right now. I'll actually go over it in tomorrow's video. But you click on the Edpuzzle link, it'll go to your hour, Mr. Muller's first hour, second hour, third hour, seventh hour, whatever it may be, and you're going to watch the whole video. It's about 58 minutes long. I may cut it because the actual documentary is about 47 minutes long, but the last 10 minutes are kind of interesting, I think. It's kind of how they shot some of the scenes in the documentary. You don't have to watch that. Okay, so you can skip after the documentary's over and they start going to the how they filmed it. You can skip all that. But you're going to watch the documentary here, and you're going to have these questions open on a separate tab, and you're going to be answering. There's a lot of questions, guys, but it's just nice and easy, straightforward from the video. Okay, so it's going to be like the Google Docs that we've done for protist research, virus research, those types of things, where you can fill in the blanks. Every student gets their own copy. You fill in the blanks, and then you hit turn in on the top right. And I'll talk more about that tomorrow. I also have Wuzzle Wednesday up for Wednesday. And then, of course, tomorrow, it will be our advisory meetings. And for my advisory this week, I just want you to bring a copy of your favorite movie if you don't have that. And if you don't have a favorite movie, maybe bring your favorite book. And we can do a little discussion. We can talk about those. And then, of course, tomorrow's theme, because every Wednesday we're doing a theme, is Decades Day. So dress up for that. 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. My cats are fighting right now. That's awesome. Great background noise. Guys, I'm trying to shoot a video here. Okay, sorry about that. So today's assignment will be reading pages 90 through 99 in your textbook, or, there it is. If you want to do the online PDF version of the pages, you certainly can. Then we're going to answer the questions in the Google form, classifying plants for 4/28 or April 28th. Scroll down to it. This will be, I think, better. Instead of me reading and looking up occasionally, I think this will be better. Okay. So the learning targets for today are what are the characteristics of non-vascular plants? Now, right now, you probably don't know what a vascular plant is or a non-vascular plant is, but you will. And then I want you to be able to know what the characteristics, the main 2 or 3 main characteristics of what makes up a non-vascular plant. Also, what are the characteristics of seedless vascular plants? So now there's vascular, non-vascular, and a part of vascular is called a seedless. Okay. And then what are the characteristics of seed plants in general? So my planetarium. The moss is greener on the other side. Tired of mowing the lawn? Never want to pull out another weed? Hire a moss landscaper. Landscapers design beautiful yards, usually planting trees, flowers, bushes, and grasses. These plants need a lot of care. Moss doesn't. Moss grows in the shade where other plants can't. Landscapers can use moss to cover an entire yard if the conditions are right. Mosses are also better for the environment. People don't have to put toxic chemicals on their moss lawns to kill weeds or keep it green. Do you think people should use moss instead of grass for their lawns? And why? One instance of an answer is yes, moss is better for the environment, but the conditions must be suitable for the moss to grow. So not everybody can have this, and not everybody would want this, but it is an option for some of us out there. So think about that. What are the characteristics of non-vascular plants? Plants that lack vascular tissue for transporting materials are known as non-vascular plants. We talked about what's important for plants to survive on land. They need to be able to transport minerals, nutrients, and water up and down. So it needs to go from the leaves down to the roots. Okay. For non-vascular plants, they lack this tissue to transport materials. So not all plants have that are on land. Non-vascular plants, now here's the main characteristics, are low growing. They have thin cell walls, so they still have cell walls, but they're very thin, and they do not have roots for absorbing water from the ground. So they do not grow on the ground, and they do not have roots to grow on the ground. Instead, they obtain water and nutrients directly from their surroundings. Very similar to how fungus feed, kind of absorb through the air or their surroundings into their cells. The materials then pass from one cell to the next. This means that materials do not travel far or very quickly. The slow method helps explain why most non-vascular plants live in damp, shady places. The thin cell walls, are why these plants cannot grow more than a few centimeters tall. All right, so they can grow outwards, think vines and stuff like that. They can grow outwards very far, but they can't really grow upwards. Okay. Now you may see some vines and stuff on top of tall trees, and there's reasons for that, but they are not growing upwards necessarily. If the tree wasn't there, all those vines would collapse to the ground, right? Some vocabulary we talk about coming up here, non-vascular plant. We talked about rhizoid, vascular plant, phloem and xylem. Of course, that's for transportation in vascular plants. Frond, pollen, seed, gymnosperm, angiosperm, cotyledon, monocot, and dicot. Mosses. Have you ever seen mosses growing in the cracks of a sidewalk or in a shady spot? With more than 10,000 species, okay, think about that. Humans have one species. They have 10,000 species. Lots of different species of mosses, even though they probably all look pretty similar. Mosses are by far the most diverse group of non-vascular plants. If you were to look closely at a moss, you would see a plant that looks something like figure 1. So down here, figure 1. Structures that look tiny structures that look like tiny leaves grow off small stem-like structure. Thin root-like structures called rhizoids anchor the moss and absorb water and nutrients. Moss grows a long, slender stalk with a capsule at the end. The capsule contains spores for reproduction. So they also do spores very similarly to fungus. Now, of course, fungus are not autotrophic, photosynthetic. They don't make their own food, but they do share some similarities, even though they're really not that closely related to fungus. And that's because things that are, the diversification of life on Earth, according to science, is, some of these living things develop the same adaptations at different times for their different, means of living. Okay, so not just fungus use spores. Okay, not just plants are photosynthetic. Not just humans can use legs to walk around. Right, so there's a lot of diversity out there for living forms, but they do share some of these adaptations to survive because they're effective adaptations. Figure 1 moss structure diagrams can be easier to read than photographs, but photographs are more realistic. Relate the diagram, photographs, and photos. Relate diagrams to photos. Label the capture stock and leaf-like structure in the photo. Draw lines from your labels of the structure itself, like in the diagram below. Okay, you do not have to do that, but obviously here you put capsule and you put a line to here. Here you put stock, and then here you put kind of leaf-like structures at the bottom and put on the line here. There it is, and then draw a line to over here. And you see the rhizoids down here for non-vascular plants. Other types of non-vascular plants, liverworts and hornworts, are two other groups of non-vascular plants. There are more than 8,000 species of liverworts alone. This group of plants is named for the shape of the plant's body, which looks something like a human liver. Lovely. Great. Wort is an Old English word for plant. Liverworts are often found growing as a thick crust on moist rocks or soil along the sides of a stream. There are fewer than 100 species of hornworts. If you look closely at a hornwort, you can see a slender curved structure that looks like horns growing out of the plant. Unlike mosses or liverworts, hornworts are seldom found on rocks or tree trunks. Instead, hornworts usually live in moist soil, often mixed in with grass plants. Okay, if you'd like to complete this, you can. I think, actually, let's do it. Why not? Identifiable physical features and where are they found? So they're mosses. They already filled it in for you. They have a fuzzy appearance. They're found in shady spots, rocks, and tree trunks. Liverworts, they look like the human liver. It's kind of gross. And they're found in moist rocks and soil along streams. Hornworts are, of course, horn-like in their kind of curved structures, and they're found in moist soil mixed in with the grass. Okay, review and assess your understanding. Is it vascular tissues or rhizoids that anchor moss and absorb water and nutrients? It's rhizoids that do that. Okay. Why are most non-vascular plants short? Because they have very thin walls to support them. And compare and contrast, how are liverworts and hornworts different? For example, they look different. Liverworts have more species, and hornworts rarely grow on rocks and trees. Right? They grow in the soil, mixed with the grass. Okay, let's move on to everybody's favorite, vascular plants. And we're going to talk about seedless vascular plants. So what are the characteristics of seedless vascular plants? If you could have walked through the ancient forests that existed long before the dinosaurs lived, they would have looked very strange to you. You might have recognized the mosses and liverworts that carpeted the moist soil, but you would have seen very tall, odd-looking creatures and trees. Among the trees grew huge tree-sized ferns. Other trees resemble giant sticks with leaves up to 1 meter long, or about 3 feet long. The odd-looking plants in the ancient forests are the ancestors of the ferns, club mosses, and horsetails of today. Ferns, club mosses, and horsetails share two characteristics. They have vascular tissue, and they do not produce seeds. Instead of seeds, the plants reproduce by releasing spores. So very similar to the non-vascular plants, they release spores to reproduce. But unlike the many plants that you know and can think of today, like flowers and, fruits and vegetable plants and trees and stuff like that, they do not use seeds. Okay? They use spores. But they do have vascular tissue. So that's what separates them from the non-vascular plants, is they do have vascular tissue. What separates them from the vascular seeded plants is obviously they don't use seeds to reproduce, they use spores. Let's talk about vascular tissue. Ancient trees were vascular plants. Vascular plants are plants with true vascular tissue. Vascular tissue plants can grow tall because their vascular tissue provides an effective way of transporting materials throughout the plant. That's a lot of times they use the word vascular. The vascular tissue, there it is again, also strengthens the plant's body. You can see the vascular tissue in a zoom in on figure 2. If you see this, it looks very similar to some of the plant cells that we looked at in slides in the microscope this year. Cells making up this vascular tissue have strong cell walls. Imagine a handful of drinking straws bundled together with rubber bands. The bundle of straws is stronger and more stable than a single straw would be. Arranged similarly, the strong tube-like structures in the vascular plants give the plant strength and stability. There are two types of vascular tissue. Phloem is the vascular tissue through which food moves. So phloem, food. Phloem, fluid, if that helps you. Phloem, not fluid, sorry. Phloem, food. After food is made in the leaves, it enters the phloem and transfers to other parts of the plant. So that's, of course, the plant doesn't go and get food. It makes its own food. But then when they make food, wherever they make it, it can transport it all throughout the plant, from the leaves to the roots, throughout the stem in the phloem. Water and minerals, on the other hand, travel in the vascular tissue called xylem. So phloem, food, xylem is water and minerals. Okay, the roots absorb water and minerals from the soil. These materials enter the roots xylem and move upward into the stems and leaves. Where's my mouse? Oh my gosh, there it is. Ferns. There are more than 12,000 species of ferns alive today. They range in size from tiny plants about the size of this letter M to tree ferns that grow up to 5 meters tall or 15 feet tall. Ferns thrive in shaded areas with moist soil. Some remain green year round, while others turn brown in the fall and regrow in spring. I'm sure many of you have seen ferns. There's many ferns in Minnesota. The structure of ferns, like other vascular plants, ferns have stems, roots, and leaves. The stems of most ferns are underground. Leaves grow upward from the top of the side of the stems, while roots grow downward from the bottom of the stems. Water nutrients enter the roots' vascular tissue and travel through the tissue into the stems and leaves. Figure 3 on the left here shows a fern structure. Notice that the fern's leaves, or what we call fronds, are divided into many smaller parts that look like small leaves. The upper surface of each frond is coated with a cuticle. Remember, we talked about cuticle when we read yesterday's pages in the book, and a cuticle helps to keep water in so you don't dry out. In many ferns, the developing leaves are coiled at first because they resemble the top of a violin. These young leaves are often called fiddleheads. Fiddleheads uncurl as they mature. So some extra information you don't necessarily need to know there, but some interesting stuff. Okay, we are going to skip the apply it on page 94 because we still have a lot to read here. I want this video to be 40 minutes long. Okay, club mosses and horsetails. Like ferns, club mosses and horsetails have true stems, roots, and leaves. However, there are relatively few species of club mosses and horsetails alive today. Do not be confused by the name club moss. Unlike true mosses, club mosses have vascular tissue. You may be familiar with the club moss in figure 4. It's a very beautiful plant. The left figure 4 is on the left. The plant, which looks a little like a small branch of a pine tree, is sometimes called ground pine or princess pine. Club mosses, I am struggling to read today. I apologize. Club mosses usually grow in moist woodlands and near streams. There are about 30 species of horsetails on Earth today. The whorled pattern of growth somewhat resembles the appearance of a horse's tail. The stem contains silica, a gritty substance also found in sand. During colonial times, Americans used the plant to scrub their pots and pans. Another common name for horsetails is scouring brushes. Okay, so let's assess your understanding. In plants, water moves through the what? Either phloem or xylem. And food moves through the phloem. Why do you think the developing leaves of a fern are coiled? It's to protect themselves. And why do you think there are more ferns than club mosses? Ferns can survive in more environments, and fewer animals eat ferns. If that's something you figured out, nice job. What are the characteristics of seed plants? Now we get to the type of plants that everybody knows and loves. Seed plants outnumber seedless plants by more than 10 to 1. You may eat many seed plants, rice, peas, and squash, for example. You wear clothes made from seed plants, such as cotton and flax. You may live in a home built from seed plants, oak, pine, or maple trees. In addition, seed plants produce much of the oxygen you breathe. Seed plants share two important characteristics. Seed plants have vascular tissue, and they use pollen and seeds to reproduce. So they both use pollen and seeds, not just seeds. But of course, the other two types of non-vascular and vascular seedless plants do not use seeds at all. In addition, the bodies of all seed plants have roots, stems, and leaves. Most seed plants live on land. Recall that land plants face many challenges, including standing upright and supplying all their cells with food and water. Like ferns, seed plants meet these two challenges with vascular tissue. Pollen and seeds. Unlike seedless plants, seed plants can live in a wide variety of environments. Recall that seedless plants need water in their surroundings for fertilization to occur. Seed plants do not need water for sperm to swim to the eggs. Instead, seed plants produce pollen, tiny structures that contain cells that will later become sperm cells. Pollen delivers sperm cells directly near the eggs. After sperm cells fertilize the eggs, seeds develop. A seed is a structure that contains a young plant inside a protective covering. Seeds protect the young plant from drying out. Seeds are one of the most important evolutionary adaptations, according to science, ever. Allowed the plants to come onto land and to not dry out. Gymnosperms. The giant sequoia trees belong to the group of seed plants known as gymnosperms. Gymnosperm is a seed plant that produces naked seeds. The seeds of gymnosperms are referred to as quote-unquote naked because they are not enclosed by a protective fruit. Many gymnosperms have needle-like or scale-like leaves and deep-growing root systems. Gymnosperms are the oldest type of seed plant. According to fossil evidence, gymnosperms first appeared on Earth about 360 million years ago. Fossils also indicate that there were many more species of gymnosperms on Earth in the past than there were today. 4 types of gymnosperms exist today, as shown in Figure 5. I apologize for the long reading here. Of course, my computer is going slow too. Here are the 4 types of gymnosperms. Not going to go through them too much, but we had the Sciads about 175 million years ago. Okay, now they actually are more tropical, palm trees, right? Conifers, the classic. We have them all over Minnesota. They have the needles and the cones to protect their seeds. Something called the ginkgos. They grew hundreds of millions of years ago. Today, only one species exists. Probably survived because the Chinese and Japanese cared for it in their gardens. Really interesting. And then we have the needlephytes. They live in hot deserts and tropical rainforests. So even though you think of these conifers or gymnosperms as just being conifers, the close related cousins of these conifers, other gymnosperms, actually live in tropical areas and in deserts. Not very many species, but a few still. This one can live to be over 1,000 years old. That's pretty impressive. Now we get to the popular part of the plants. That's the most popular part of the plants. So everybody knows the vascular seeded plants, and everybody knows conifers, but everybody knows and loves angiosperms, which is the flowers and oak trees and other things that you guys all see every day. Angiosperms, you probably associate the word flower with a sweet-smelling plant growing in a garden. You certainly wouldn't think of something that smells like rotting meat. That's exactly what the corpse flower is, or the Rafflesia, smells like. This flower, which grows in Asia, produces a meat smell, which attracts flies that spread the flower's pollen. Very incredibly smart. You won't be seeing Rafflesia in your local florist shop anytime soon. Rafflesia belongs to a group of seed plants known as angiosperms. Angiosperms, or flowering plants, share 2 important characteristics. First, they produce flowers. Second, in contrast to gymnosperms, which produce uncovered seeds, angiosperms produce seeds that are enclosed in fruits. Oops. Angiosperms live almost everywhere on Earth. They grow in frozen areas in the Arctic, tropical jungles, and barren deserts. A few angiosperms, such as mangrove trees, live at the ocean's edge. Types of angiosperms. Angiosperms are divided into 2 major groups, monocots and dicots. Cot is short for cotyledon. The cotyledon, or seed leaf, provides food for the embryo. Mono means 1 and di means 2. Monocots are angiosperms that have only 1 seed leaf. Grasses including corn, wheat, and rice, and plants such as lilies and tulips are monocots. Dicots, on the other hand, produce seeds with 2 seed leaves. Dicots include plants such as roses and violets, as well as dandelions. Both oak and maple trees are dicots, as are food plants such as beans and apples. Figure 6 shows the characteristics of monocots and dicots. Don't really need you to know these very fine details of what a monocot and a dicot is, just that you know that they're there, and it's a way to kind of classify within the angiosperm tree of plants. So single versus 2 cotyledons. Okay, you can see that they follow some other kind of distinct characteristics here, but very similar in that they have seeds and that they have enclosed fruits to protect their seeds. We're going to skip do the math, and we're going to go right to accessory understanding. So define, what are pollen? Pollen are tiny structures that contain cells that will later become sperm, so then the egg can meet it and become fertilized, and a new seed can be produced. Or not a seed can be produced, but a new living thing can be produced for seedless vascular plants and non-vascular plants. Draw conclusions. Also, again, some seeded vascular plants do use pollen. Why do you think angiosperms enclose their seeds in fruit? Well, the seeds are better protected in fruit and are more likely to survive. And if you think about it, some fruits and vegetables don't taste very good, and some of them had to be selectively bred by humans in order to taste better, be bigger, more delicious, all those things. So some of them are not, they're just out there for protection. But some, obviously, like raspberries and bananas and a few other things that grow naturally without the help of humans, those things are meant to attract animals so they can be eaten, and then they can be processed and then pooped out, and then that is used as help seed fertilizer for it to grow, potentially, right? So there's many reasons to have fruits. The trees and plants aren't just giving fruits and vegetables out because they like us or they like animals, right? There's a adaptation behind it. Okay. So we're going to stop right here at lesson 3, plant structures. That's what we'll get into next week. And we're going to talk about the structure of a flower. I'm going to dissect a flower. You're going to have a little assignment on a flower, but that will be next week. Alrighty. I think I've talked enough in this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. Again, if you have any questions for me about anything from this week to the past 4 weeks, please let me know. And thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Bye. Bye-bye.